The sheriff's notice trembled in Maria Santos's weathered hands, the red ink spelling out her worst nightmare. Final eviction, 48 hours. Behind her, the sound of tape ripping echoed through the hollow rooms as her 17-year-old daughter Sophia sealed another cardboard box, each strip of adhesive tearing away another piece of their shattered life together. "Mija, please," Maria whispered, her voice breaking as Sophia carried the box toward the front door. "We can figure this out. We can—" "Figure what out, Mom?" Sophia's words cut through the silence like shards of glass. "Dad's been gone 8 months. The house is gone. The money's gone. I'm staying with Aunt Carmen." She paused at the threshold, her young face hardened by grief and disappointment. "There's nothing left to figure out." Before we go deeper into this mystery, take a moment to subscribe to Virgin Mary Mysteries. Stories like this are too powerful to experience alone. In the comments below, tell us where you're watching from, and share a short prayer or phrase that gives you strength in difficult times. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. As the front door slammed shut, leaving Maria alone in the house that had sheltered 3 generations of her family, her gaze fell upon the ceramic figure that had remained untouched throughout the chaos. On the mantel, surrounded by empty picture frames and dust outlines, where precious belongings once stood, sat a small Virgin Mary statue with gentle painted eyes and outstretched hands. The statue had been her grandmother's, passed down with whispered stories of impossible answered prayers and quiet miracles during the darkest nights. But now, as Maria stared at those serene features, she felt only the weight of unanswered questions. Where was divine intervention when her husband lay dying in the hospital? Where was protection when the medical bills consumed their savings? Where was mercy when her daughter's heart hardened against hope itself? Maria sank into the single remaining chair. Everything else had been sold months ago, and buried her face in her hands. The eviction notice crumpled in her lap as tears she'd held back for weeks finally came. Through her fingers, she could still see the Virgin Mary statue, its presence both comforting and accusatory. Had she failed in faith? Had she not prayed hard enough, believed deeply enough? Outside, a car door slammed and Maria's heart lurched. Were the sheriff's deputies arriving early? She wasn't ready. She would never be ready to lose the last physical connection to her life with Roberto, to the home where Sophia had taken her first steps, to the dreams they'd built together. But as she rose to face whatever waited beyond her front door, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Call it intuition, call it desperation, or perhaps call it something else entirely. But in the silence of that moment, with only the Virgin Mary statue as witness, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. What force could possibly intervene when everything seemed lost beyond redemption? 3 years earlier, Maria Santos had stood in this same living room, but the walls had been painted sunshine yellow then, filled with laughter and the aroma of Roberto's famous weekend pancakes. Sophia had been 14, still willing to curl up next to her mother during Sunday evening movies, still believing her parents held all the answers to life's mysteries. The Virgin Mary statue had occupied the same spot on the mantel, but then it had been surrounded by family photographs in silver frames, Roberto's graduation from trade school, Sophia's quinceañera, 3 generations of Santos family Christmas mornings. Maria's grandmother had placed the statue there in 1962, when she'd first moved into this house as a young bride, whispering a prayer that the Blessed Mother would watch over all who dwelled within these walls. "She protected me through 7 pregnancies, Mija," Abuela Rosa had told Maria decades later, her gnarled fingers tracing the statue's ceramic folds. "Through your grandfather's drinking years, through the fire that took the kitchen in 78, through your mother's cancer." The old woman's eyes had grown distant. "Some nights I would wake to find candles lit around her that I never remembered lighting. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps not." Roberto had always smiled indulgently at these stories, kissing Maria's forehead whenever she'd light a votive candle during particularly stressful times. "Your grandmother's faith kept this family strong," he'd say, "but we'll make our own luck, mi amor." He'd been a practical man, an electrician who believed in hard work, honest living, and the power of human determination. The diagnosis had come on a Tuesday in September. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. Roberto had gripped Maria's hand in that sterile oncology office, his calloused palm suddenly feeling fragile as paper, and whispered, "Now might be a good time to light those candles." What followed were 8 months that drained not just their savings, but their very souls. Experimental treatments not covered by insurance, second mortgages against the house, Sophia watching her father disappear by degrees while her mother transformed from wife to nurse to desperate supplicant, kneeling before the Virgin Mary statue at all hours, rosary beads worn smooth by constant handling. The night Roberto died, Maria had found Sophia sitting alone in the darkness, staring at the statue with hollow, accusatory eyes. "If she's supposed to protect this family," the teenager had whispered, her voice raw from crying, "then why didn't she save him? Why didn't all your prayers save him?" Maria had no answer then. She had no answer now. The medical bills had arrived like waves against a crumbling seawall. Anesthesiology charges, radiation fees, medications that cost more per dose than Roberto had earned in a week. The life insurance policy had been cancelled when they'd missed payments during Roberto's final month. The savings account that had taken 20 years to build evaporated in 6. As Maria stood in the present moment, surrounded by the echoes of better days, she noticed something that made her breath catch. Despite months of packing and selling, despite Sophia's angry purging of family belongings, the Virgin Mary statue remained exactly where it had always been. Neither of them had even considered moving it. Why had they both, unconsciously, preserved this one sacred witness to their family's destruction? The knock never came. Instead, at dawn on the day the sheriff was scheduled to arrive, Maria discovered something that defied all logic, a manila envelope wedged beneath her front door, thick enough to contain what felt like documents. Her name was written across the front in careful script, but there was no return address, no postmark, no explanation of how it had arrived. Inside, Maria found a cashier's check made out to her for exactly $3,247.82. The precise amount needed to secure a 30-day extension from the mortgage company. Not a penny more, not a penny less. The accompanying note was brief. For Maria Santos, 1 month to find your way. Use it wisely. Maria's hands shook as she examined the check under the morning light streaming through her kitchen window. The bank routing numbers appeared legitimate. The security features seemed authentic, but the payer line remained mysteriously blank. No corporate sponsor, no charitable organization, no wealthy benefactor's signature, just empty space where answers should have been. She called the issuing bank immediately, her heart hammering as she waited through automated menus. The customer service representative confirmed what seemed impossible. "Yes, Mrs. Santos, the check is valid and fully funded. The account holder requested complete anonymity. We cannot provide any information about the source." For the first time in months, Maria felt something other than despair. But alongside relief came a profound uneasiness. Who knew her exact financial situation down to the dollar? Who had access to her mortgage details? She'd shared these specifics with no one except the bank's loss mitigation department, and her gaze drifted to the Virgin Mary statue on the mantel, and a memory surfaced unbidden. 2 nights earlier, unable to sleep, she'd knelt before the ceramic figure and whispered her most specific prayer yet. "Holy Mother, I need $3,247.82 to buy us 30 more days, that's all. Just enough time to figure out what comes next." The coincidence felt too precise to dismiss, yet too extraordinary to accept. If this story is pulling you in, subscribe now and tell me in the comments what you believe is really happening. Your insight might reveal something we haven't seen yet. Maria drove to the mortgage company that same morning. The cashier's check secured in an envelope pressed against her chest like a talisman. The loss mitigation specialist, Mrs. Chen, examined the payment with professional skepticism before processing the extension. "You're very fortunate, Mrs. Santos. In 15 years, I've never seen someone come up with the exact amount needed at the last possible moment." But as Maria walked back to her car, she noticed Mrs. Chen watching her through the office window with an expression that seemed almost knowing. When their eyes met, the woman offered a small smile and made a subtle gesture, her hand moving in what could have been a casual wave, or perhaps the sign of the cross. The 30-day reprieve felt like a miracle, but it also brought new questions that gnawed at Maria throughout the drive home. Was someone watching her family? Had Mrs. Chen somehow been involved? And if divine providence was truly at work, why had it taken so long to arrive? Most troubling of all, what would happen when these 30 days expired and she was no closer to a permanent solution? The phone rang at 2:47 a.m., jolting Maria from the first peaceful sleep she'd experienced in weeks. Sophia's name appeared on the screen, and Maria's heart seized. Her daughter never called this late unless something was terribly wrong. "Mom?" Sophia's voice sounded strange, uncertain in a way that reminded Maria of the little girl who used to crawl into their bed during thunderstorms. "Something weird just happened, and I didn't know who else to call." Maria sat up, instantly alert. "Mija, what's wrong? Are you safe?" "I'm fine, but—" Sophia paused, and Maria could hear the confusion in her daughter's breathing. "I got a phone call an hour ago. Some woman said she was calling about a receptionist position at Hartwell and Associates downtown. She apologized for calling so late, said she'd gotten my number from a referral and wanted to schedule an interview for tomorrow morning." A job interview? Maria's mind struggled to process this. Sophia had been staying with her aunt for only 3 days, barely enough time to even look for work. "Did you apply somewhere?" "That's just it, Mom. I never applied anywhere. I haven't even started looking yet." Sophia's voice grew quieter, more vulnerable. "But when I told her there must be some mistake, she said, 'No mistake, Sophia Santos. We've been expecting your call.' She knew my full name, Mum. She knew I was 17. She even knew I'd graduated early from high school." A chill ran through Maria that had nothing to do with the cold house. She found herself looking toward the living room, where the Virgin Mary statue sat in silhouette against the window, bathed in streetlight like a gentle beacon. "The strangest part," Sophia continued, "is that Hartwell and Associates is exactly the kind of place I've always dreamed of working. They do community outreach, help families with legal aid and social services. The woman, Ms. Rodriguez, said they specifically needed someone who understood what it meant to struggle, someone who could connect with families in crisis." Maria's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I said yes." Sophia's voice broke slightly. "Mom," I said yes. And then I sat here for an hour wondering if I was losing my mind. Wrong number calls don't lead to perfect job opportunities. That's not how the real world works. But as Maria gripped the phone, her grandmother's words echoed across the decades. Some nights I would wake to find candles lit around her that I never remembered lighting. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps not. "Sophia," Maria whispered, her own voice trembling now. "Do you remember when you were little? How Abuela Rosa used to tell us stories about the Virgin Mary watching over our family?" "Yeah, I remember." Sophia's tone carried a note of something between hope and fear. "Mom, you don't think... it's just coincidence, right? People get lucky breaks sometimes." Maria closed her eyes, thinking of the mysterious cashier's check, of Mrs. Chen's knowing smile, of the precise timing that had saved them from eviction just days before. "I don't know, Mija, but maybe it's time to stop questioning good things when they happen." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities, and the weight of shared grief that was slowly, impossibly, beginning to transform into something else. But if forces beyond their understanding were truly intervening, what did that mean for a family that had already lost so much? 3 days after Sophia's mysterious job interview, which had gone so well that she'd been hired on the spot, Maria's 15-year-old Honda Civic began making an ominous grinding sound as she drove home from the grocery store. The noise grew worse with each mile, accompanied by a burning smell that made her stomach clench with dread. Another expense she couldn't afford, another crisis with no solution in sight. The car finally surrendered 2 blocks from home, coasting to a stop in front of a narrow brick building with a modest sign, Velasco and Partners, wrongful death and medical malpractice attorneys. Maria sat in the silent vehicle, fighting back tears as steam rose from under the hood. Of all the places her car could have broken down, why here? Why in front of lawyers who specialized in exactly the kind of case that could have saved her family months ago? She called the nearest auto repair shop, but the tow truck wouldn't arrive for 2 hours. With nothing else to do, Maria found herself staring at the law office's window display, which featured testimonials from families who'd fought medical malpractice suits and won. One photograph showed a woman not unlike herself, holding a picture of her deceased husband with the caption, "When the hospital's negligence killed my beloved Miguel, Velasco and Partners fought for justice and accountability." Something Roberto had said during his final weeks suddenly surfaced in Maria's memory, sharp and clear. "The oncologist never told us about that experimental treatment until it was too late, mi amor. Dr. Henderson at the other hospital said if we'd known about it 2 months earlier." Roberto had been too weak by then to pursue the matter, and Maria had been too consumed with grief to think clearly about medical negligence. The law office door chimed as Maria entered, uncertain why she'd decided to step inside. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, looked up with immediate concern. "Are you all right, dear? You look upset." "My car broke down outside," Maria explained, feeling foolish. "I'm just waiting for a tow truck. Please sit down. Would you like some water, coffee?" The woman's compassion felt genuine, unhurried. "I'm Elena Moreno. Are you Maria Santos?" Maria's blood turned cold. "How do you know my name?" Elena's expression grew gentle, almost maternal. "Dr. Henderson from St. Catherine's Hospital called our office this morning. He said he'd been carrying a burden for months about a patient's case, Roberto Santos. He felt we should know about potential medical negligence in his treatment protocol." The room seemed to tilt. Roberto's medical records, expert testimony about delayed treatment options, documented communication failures, everything Elena described painted a picture of winnable litigation that could result in substantial compensation for Roberto's estate. "Dr. Henderson said he'd tried to find you several times, but hadn't been able to locate your contact information," Elena continued. "Then this morning, he said he felt compelled to call us and provide your details. He seemed quite urgent about it, actually. Said he couldn't explain why, but he felt it was important we reach you today." As Maria absorbed this information, one question burned through her confusion and hope. What force had brought her broken-down car to this exact spot, on this exact day, when everything she needed was finally within reach? 6 weeks later, Maria sat in the law office conference room as Attorney Velasco slid the settlement papers across the mahogany table. The number at the bottom made her dizzy. $287,000 after medical expert fees and court costs. Enough to save the house, pay off Roberto's remaining debts, and give Sophia a chance at college. Everything they'd lost seemed suddenly restored. The hospital settled quickly, Attorney Velasco explained, his weathered face creased with satisfaction. Dr. Henderson's testimony about the delayed treatment protocol was devastating to their defense. Your husband should have been informed about that experimental therapy 8 weeks earlier than he was. Maria signed her name with trembling hands, each letter feeling like a prayer of gratitude. But as she prepared to ask about the legal fees, Attorney Velasco held up his hand with a gentle smile. "There's one more matter, Mrs. Santos. Our firm's fees for this case have been paid in full by an anonymous benefactor. Someone contacted our office this morning and wired the entire amount, 87 $, with instructions that you should receive the full settlement without any deductions. The room seemed to spin. That's impossible. Who would do such a thing? We don't know, Elena Moreno added from her seat beside the attorney. The wire came from a trust account with no identifying information, just instructions that Mrs. Maria Santos should be free to start again without burdens. When we tried to trace the source, we hit legal privacy walls that would take months to penetrate. Maria drove home in a daze, her newly repaired Honda running smoothly thanks to a mechanic who'd somehow ordered the wrong part that ended up being exactly what she needed. Every coincidence was adding up to an impossible pattern that defied rational explanation. Sophia was waiting in the driveway when Maria pulled up, her face glowing with the confidence that came from 3 successful weeks at Hartwell & Associates. For the first time in months, Maria saw her daughter smile, really smile, as she shared the news about the settlement. "Mom," Sophia whispered as they stood together in the living room, both of them unconsciously facing the Virgin Mary statue on the mantel. "I've been thinking about what Abuela Rosa used to say, about prayers being answered in ways we don't expect." Maria nodded, tears flowing freely now. Would you pray with me tonight, mija, like we used to when you were little?" Sophia's answer was to kneel beside the coffee table, pulling out the rosary beads that had belonged to her great-grandmother. As mother and daughter began the familiar rhythm of Hail Marys, the ceramic figure seemed to glow in the lamplight, its painted eyes reflecting something that felt like profound peace. But even as they prayed together, surrounded by the comfort of answered prayers, a new question emerged from the silence. If someone had been orchestrating these impossible interventions, why now? And what did they want in return for such extraordinary generosity? On the morning Maria was scheduled to deposit the settlement check at the bank, she discovered the unthinkable. The cashier's check had somehow been damaged during the night. Coffee had spilled across her kitchen table where she'd left the document, the ink bleeding and smearing across the signature line and bank routing numbers until they were completely illegible. Sophia stood beside her mother in the ruined kitchen, both of them staring at what remained of their financial salvation. "How did this happen?" Sophia whispered, her voice hollow with disbelief. "The coffee maker was unplugged. The pot was empty when we went to bed." Maria's hands shook as she held the damaged check up to the light, desperately searching for any salvageable numbers or markings. 3 months of legal proceedings, weeks of hope and healing, their renewed faith, all of it seemed to dissolve with the spreading brown stains that had destroyed their future. "The bank won't honor this," Maria said, her voice breaking. "Look at it, mija. You can barely read my name, let alone the amount or the routing information." They called Attorney Velasco immediately, but his news was devastating. "The settlement account was a one-time disbursement, Mrs. Santos. The hospital closed it immediately after issuing your check. If the check is truly damaged, beyond recognition, we'll have to petition the court to reopen the settlement. Refile motions, possibly wait months for a new judgment." Months they didn't have. The mortgage company had already granted them maximum extensions. Sophia's new job, while meaningful, paid barely enough to cover basic expenses. Without the settlement money, they would lose everything they'd fought so hard to save. As they sat in the lawyer's office that afternoon, Maria felt her faith crumbling. Had she been naive to believe that divine intervention was guiding their lives? Had the string of miracles been nothing more than coincidence and wishful thinking? The timing of this disaster felt almost cruel. To restore their hope so completely, only to snatch it away when they were within reach of true security. But as they prepared to leave the office, Elena Moreno burst through the door with an expression of absolute amazement. "Mr. Velasco, Mrs. Santos, you need to see this immediately." She led them to the front window, where a man in an expensive suit was stepping out of a luxury sedan, carrying what appeared to be an official bank portfolio. "That's Marcus Hoffman from First National's executive office." In 30 years of legal practice, I've never seen a bank vice president make a personal house call to verify a damaged cashier's check. The man approached with the kind of urgency typically reserved for emergencies, yet his expression was calm, almost serene. He introduced himself and then said something that defied every protocol Maria understood about banking. "Mrs. Santos, I've brought emergency authorization to honor your settlement check, regardless of its condition. Our fraud department has already verified the account history, and I'm prepared to personally guarantee immediate fund availability." As Maria stared at this impossible intervention, one final question crystallized in her mind. If forces beyond human understanding were truly protecting her family, what would happen when those forces were no longer needed? 6 months after the banking miracle that had secured their settlement, Maria and Sofia Santos stood in their fully renovated kitchen, sunlight streaming through new curtains as the aroma of fresh coffee filled the air. The house felt alive again. Walls repainted in warm colors, family photographs restored to their places of honor, laughter echoing in rooms that had once been hollowed by grief. Sofia had been promoted at Hartwell and Associates, her natural empathy and understanding of family crisis making her invaluable to the community outreach program. She was also taking evening classes at the local community college, her tuition covered by the settlement money that had given them far more than financial security. It had restored their belief in tomorrow. The Virgin Mary statue remained on the mantle, but now it was surrounded by fresh flowers that Sofia brought home every Friday, a tradition she'd begun spontaneously and couldn't fully explain. "It just feels right," she told her mother, "like we owe her something beautiful for everything that happened." On quiet evenings, when mother and daughter knelt together for their now regular rosary prayers, Maria sometimes caught herself studying the ceramic figure's serene expression, searching for answers to questions that would likely never be resolved. Who had orchestrated the cascade of impossible interventions? Who had known exactly what their family needed and when they needed it most? The anonymous benefactor's identity remained a complete mystery. Attorney Velasco had exhausted every legal avenue trying to trace the source of the payments. Dr. Henderson insisted he'd felt compelled to call the law office, but couldn't explain the urgency that had driven him. Mrs. Chen at the mortgage company had been transferred to another branch, leaving no forwarding information. Even Marcus Hoffman, the bank vice president, seemed bewildered by his own actions when questioned later, saying he'd felt an overwhelming sense that this family needed immediate help. But perhaps the most profound mystery was the transformation within Maria herself. The bitter anger that had consumed her during Roberto's illness had been replaced by something she could only describe as profound gratitude, not just for the miracles they'd experienced, but for the reminder that love persists even through loss, that families can heal even after breaking, that hope can return even from the deepest despair. "Do you think Dad knows what happened to us?" Sofia asked one evening as they finished their prayers, her voice carrying the soft wonder of someone who had learned to believe in things beyond understanding. Maria reached for her daughter's hand, her fingers finding the smooth beads of Abuela Rosa's rosary. "I think he knows we're going to be all right, Mika. I think he's been part of making sure we would be." They sat together in comfortable silence, two women who had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but undeniably blessed. The Virgin Mary statue watched over them with timeless serenity, keeper of their family's secrets and guardian of mysteries that would endure long after their own stories were told. If this story moved you, subscribe to Virgin Mary Mysteries so you never miss the next chapter in these extraordinary mysteries. In the comments below, share your own phrase of gratitude or protection, something that gives you strength when you need it most. Let's create a prayer chain that reminds us all that miracles are closer than we think. Yet in the flickering candlelight that danced across the Virgin Mary's painted features, one question remained unanswered. In a world full of families facing impossible circumstances, how does grace decide where to intervene.